we were stationed in this area in Afghanistan where basically across the road, there was like one paved road in Afghanistan, so Route Utah. We were on one side of the road, and on the other side was this like bad guy town, for lack of a better description. And we regularly went in there. It was just, that was the place we went in because there was always something happening in there. And we'd been going in there for like 5 months, and every time we went in there, we would just get shot at. It was like they'd see us coming. There was no way to show up without giving away your position. And so we went in one day.
You had been going in there every month or every day for 5 months. So they kind of were like, hey, I think the Americans want to come fight.
Yeah, pretty much. And so this one day we go in, it was just like this weird day where it was broad daylight, and we get into this, it's like the section of the town, which was walled in. So we were kind of like hidden. And we ended up putting ourselves in a position where we got out and we moved into like the side of the town, and there was all these fighters in the second floor of these buildings, but they weren't engaging us. They were just watching us. And we kind of put ourselves in this very perilous situation where we had moved up far enough away from the vehicles where back to them, we would be exposed to these guys in the second floor that we didn't see until we got up to this wall. And so we're like at the standstill where we're kind of like hoping they shoot us so we can open up our rules of engagement so we can like shoot back, because we can't until they start shooting at us. And so for like 40.
Did anybody take like a helmet and put it like on a broomstick?
Yeah,
see if it can shot it?
Us. And so we were like laying down behind this wall, and we're like, fuck, like what do we do? And finally the decision was made, like if we go back, there's a good chance one of us gets shot. And it's so stupid to like, all right, we're just gonna walk backwards with our back to the enemy. And so we're like, all right, we're gonna assault through. And so we walked into the courtyard. There was like the worst place you could go. There was nowhere else we could go. We had to walk straight into this courtyard. It's all on body cam too, and it's eerie footage. We walk into this courtyard and it's like quiet, but what you don't see in the video is like lining the walls in the second floor are fighters that we know are there. And so we're just like walking in, getting ready to get shot at, and then they opened up on us. And in the first volley of fire, this sounds horrible, but no Americans got shot. Some of our partner force did, and they were okay. Everybody lived. But in the initial volley, all the SEALs were okay. And so we took to the buildings, and it turned into this like pretty long gunfight. Our dog got shot too, but our dog survived. And so we're like fighting like rooftop to rooftop, and it's fairly close combat. It was like kind of the whole time I was there, this was by far the most intense thing I was a part of, except for what happens in about a couple hours after this. And so we have this like all day long kind of like, you know how it is. It's not like we're literally engaging the enemy for like 6 hours, but it was like sporadic for about 6 hours. And then like by the evening time, the fighting had kind of just stopped abruptly. It was dark out, and it was like everybody had just disappeared. And it was like very anticlimactic, because we're in the middle of this like Rambo-esque gunfight all day, and then like suddenly everyone's gone, and we kind of got our ass kicked. We had like 5 medevacs going out, and we're like, damn, like now what do we do? And as we're getting ready to leave, one of our drones overhead picks up a group of what looks like fighters, but we don't know who they are. And they're like, hey, there's a group of military age males that are kind of clustered near the exit where you guys are going. And at this point, we'd all, the SEAL platoon had broken into different fire teams. And so my fire team, which is, for those listening, it's just a small group of guys. There was like 6 of us. We were closest to this group. And so we're like, okay, well, we're just going to go see who they are. We're not going to do anything. We're just going to walk over and take a look at this group and see if they really are fighters. And we walk down this alleyway, and we get to this wall where the intel we were being fed was we would be able to get to this wall, poke our heads over it, and look out across this field and see this group from a safe distance behind a wall.
Yes.
And so we walk down this alleyway, and we're like, this is going to be great. We're going to get this great intel. And we like realize right when we get to the wall that on the immediate other side of the wall, not across the field, but like a foot away from us, are the fighters. And all of us, we've made no noise going down this alleyway. We're like surprisingly quiet. We're looking at each other, and even under nods, night vision, it was clear that all of us are looking at each other like, what have we done? We are literally in the hornet's nest. And so we had to just be proactive. And so one guy stood over the wall, starts engaging them. they were holding grenades. So we also looked first and we saw they had guns. So we started shooting and they were holding grenades for like this scenario. This is the scenario they were preparing for. Is if the idiots come up to us, we're going to have grenades, we're going to throw down their throats. And so here we are. And so grenades come over the wall. And I remember I was like, it was so crazy. The grenade comes over the wall and it hits my shoulder and lands in the ground between all of us. This is like a kill shot. And I remember as the grenade came over the wall, we were standing in the infrared spotlight from the drone overhead, but it was like the targeting one. It was like flashing. And so it's this crazy scenario where there's like gunfire like right in front of us. It's like super intimate gunfire. And the grenade is just coming right over the fence towards me, the wall. And I'm watching it hit my shoulder and I'm like, well, that's the end for me. and like time really slowed down because like I really was expecting to get my head literally blown off. But it kept falling to the ground. And I remember as it traveled, this is happening in a fraction of a second, but as it was traveling to the ground, I remember it reached my midsection. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to get killed, but at least my head will still be intact and my family can recognize me. And then it kept going down. It made it to my legs. I'm like, oh, shit, I might live through this. I'm going to blow my legs off, but I might live. And then it hit the ground. And it's like, whoa, I might live. And it felt like someone took a whole bunch of rocks and just like threw them at my leg and my back. And my conception of time after the detonation is it's a mess. I thought for the longest time that like it blew up, but I was totally conscious and like began to move to get to cover. But in reality, I got completely annihilated, like went straight on the ground, and I was unconscious. And a couple other guys were down too. But our medic, who I'm sure you know him too, but our medic. He was like the only guy that wasn't concussed from the 2 grenades that came over the wall. And so imagine this scene for the medic, okay? Everyone's fucking down. And there's literally, the enemy is on the immediate other side of this wall. And they're just spraying like AK-47s over the wall. And the rest of the city, there was all these fighters in other parts of the town who began just like firing rockets generally in our direction. They don't give a shit if they hit their own guys. Firing rockets towards us. And so our one medic, he's like looking down this tiny little alleyway, and it's like hell. And he said he went into this like state of like flow, and he was like, I just knew what I had to do, and he began going guy to guy doing needle decompressions and just everything he had to do. And he told me, this totally freaked me out years later when I talked to him. He was like, dude, I saw you on the ground, and I told like in terms of triage, I was like, you're dead. And I moved on to the next guy because you were face down and you just weren't moving. And he was like, I had to go to the other guys first.
I like your memory of it better, where you were like Rambo and you like ran away and like you picked up some buddies on their way out.
Yeah. Instead, I was just laying there. But he said after he got a bunch of guys out, he said he came back and he saw that like, I don't even know what he saw that triggered that maybe I was okay. But either way, he came over to me and he dragged me to not even cover, but concealment. So bullets can't. So cover, concealment. Cover, bullets will stop. Concealment, you're just hidden. And he kind of moved me out of the way, and he was like, as he moved me, I kind of came to, and I was all screwed up. And he's like, John, you got to put tourniquets on your legs. I have to go down and get somebody else. And I'm like, okay. And I was too weak to literally break the rubber bands that hold your tourniquets on your kit. Yeah. And so I'm sitting against this wall, and I'm alive, obviously. And I remember my vision, like went to like toilet paper rolls.
Yeah.
I went deaf. And then I actually went blind and I can't get my tourniquets off. And I was like, well, now I'm dying. Like that, it wasn't even sad. It was more like, this is a fact that like, I am currently in the state of dying. This is what it feels like. I know I'm bleeding to death. Yeah. And
I actually want to stop for a second, because I think it's fascinating at how the clarity you have of going through the stages of, I'm going to have my head popped off like a I don't know, like something that has a head popped off. I don't know, right? And then you're like, oh, okay, now it's at my midsection, so I'm about to lose my junk, but I might live, but my head will be intact. And then it's like, oh, now it's at my legs. I think it's fascinating because this is in a matter of milliseconds, and yet you remember your brain processing these very distinct, separate thoughts. I'm going to lose my head. Okay, my head will be intact. I'm still going to die. Okay, now I might live, but my legs are going to be blown off. Holy shit, it's on the ground. I might actually live. I think that's a fascinating look at just like how the neural receptors just work, without geeking out on that shit. But it's crazy, right?
Yeah. it's weird because I look back at it and I know it happened in a matter of a second. I mean, it's how long does it take for a rock to fall from your head to the ground?
Yeah.
Like a second.
Yeah, right.
Not even. And it's really is true. It's not something that my brain concocted after the fact. It was like, when you're gonna die or when you're gonna experience something super traumatic and you know it's like, I would imagine if you like walked into the street and a car was blazing towards you and there's no way to get out of the way, it's probably similar. Those people who die after getting hit by those cars, they do think of something before they're hit. There are thoughts that you process. And I think when your body knows something really fucking bad is going to happen to you, it like fires off all sorts of chemicals into your body to like prepare yourself for this horrible thing. And it gives the illusion, because you're thinking about it so much and so intently, it gives the illusion of time being slower than it really is. And I remember that grenade really in those stages. It was like the longest, to me, few seconds. It was probably a fraction of a second, but it's that's how I remember it. But I'm up against this wall. I go blind, I go deaf. And then I was like, so that's the end. That's it. I remember I thought about my wife, who's back home in Virginia. I remember I was like really frustrated that I didn't have a family with her yet. We put off having kids to get through one deployment, you know. And then I remember it was like the feeling I had was of letting go. That's the only way I can describe the physical feeling I had. But I knew I was dying. I was like, all right, that's it. And I kind of let go. And I remember hitting the ground next to me and feeling the ground. And then that was it. That's all I remember. And then my medic had run back over, saw me slouched over. He immediately starts trying to find the bleed and he puts tourniquets on. And then I kind of come back to, and he's laying over me, like using his body as like a human shield, as like we're getting shot at down the alleyway. And he's so calm. He's looking me in the face. He's like, hey, John, how's it going? Got your tourniquets on, like in the middle of this gunfight. Hey, how's it going? Get your tourniquets on. I think you're going to be okay. That the bleeding stopped. He was like, can you stand up on your own? I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, yeah, you're going to be fine. Like literally bullets flying overhead. And they hoisted me up. And then another guy we called in, I'm pretty sure this, I don't know if this is definitely true, but I'm pretty sure we called in a danger close airstrike. So the danger close, for those that you know what this is, but it's like, if you have to call an airstrike in on yourself, more or less, because you're in such a dire situation that you're like, hey, we have to drop on ourselves. Otherwise, we're dead anyways. I'm almost positive we did, because the Hellfire missile struck like 6 feet away from us on the other side of this wall and luckily hit the guys that we've been fighting with.
Which is a separate story about how accurate munitions can be today. The fact that you said they're literally like 18 inches on the other side of this wall from us, and yet a Hellfire missile. And kudos to those guys up in the air who are able to discern who the good guys, who the bad guys are. You're like, we're on the good side of the wall. They're like, which side is that? All I see is bullets flying on the side of the wall. And then kudos to the guys in the sky who can discern that and then make sure that missile gets on the right side of the wall.
Yeah, that was a ballsy drop. So that was great. And then they couldn't get a helo to come in to get us because we were in the middle of this very urban section of town. And so we had to run like 800 meters to a hot extract. And I couldn't move. I could stand, but my legs were like pillars, you know, I couldn't move them. And so my medic and another guy are like running, holding me. And we're just like running literally through a street. Like, we haven't cleared anything. No, and like there's no help. We're just running through this town where rockets are just being fired arbitrarily in our direction. And we get to the helo and they throw us in the helo. And then our other guys, they couldn't fit on the helo. So they had to stay there and like fight their way back to the other guys, but they were fine. But yeah, then I got medevaced. And then actually there's another weird part to the story. They didn't know how bad, by they, I mean the other team guys that were in Afghanistan that were at the first base that me and the other guy I was with were getting medevaced to. They had seen that a couple team guys had gotten hurt and they were getting medevaced, that it was gunshot wound, whatever it was. And they didn't know the severity of the injuries. They had no idea if it was nothing or if it was going to be really bad. And so a bunch of the team guys went into the medical tent and like put on their best uniform, which was like shitty camo, but it was the best one they could find. And they were there to meet us in case we died. And so we went into the tent. And like, I remember looking around, it was like the weirdest scene. You have all these doctors like with their gloves on, like waiting to do intense surgery to us. And then on the side of the tent is like 20 team guys that have like the most intense face on because they don't know what they're going to see. Is it going to be 2 dead guys coming in or, you know? And it dawned on me when I first got in there, like, oh, this is great. My buddies are here. I was like joking, like, look at my, I was naked from the waist down. I was like, look. And I was like making jokes as I go in. And then I was like, oh shit, like this is like where people die too. And like, they don't know if I'm gonna live or die. And then I'm like, wait, am I gonna die? I feel pretty stable now.
Yeah.
But they wheeled us in and I got put under right away. And they just had to pull some shrapnel out. I was lucky enough that I didn't have what they called it. You have to beep this out, but so anal breaching. I was lucky enough to not have that, because if the shrapnel had gone in and like punctured that part of me, it would have almost definitely led to a massive infection and I would have died. And so they were like, you were this close. You were like this close to being unrecoverable. But yeah, so we lived. That was pretty crazy.